Phil, metrics, they overwhelm us.
Mm-hmm.
You are much more offline than I am online, and for that, I envy you. I used to post and ghost. I now post and get sucked into things a little bit. You don't post,
Ghost.
and you just ghost and ghost. You are a ghost. You're in a white t-shirt as well.
Well, I know I should post more, but I'm coming to terms with my relationship with social media since having children. It definitely reframes.
And their
But
relationship with iPads?
Yeah, we don't.
None. Okay.
Nothing without that.
So do you feel in the past 5 to 10 years that the world is much more digitally focused and that it's made you think more binarily about things that you used to not pay as much attention to? Do you feel a little bit compressed or overwhelmed by how much digitization there is still, even as someone that's not?
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, there's the possibility of too much information.
Yeah.
And it completely blurs your opinion on things, I think.
Yeah.
To the point where everyone's looking, even if it's just like a particular topic, like I want to find out as much as possible in this topic. And if you go online, sometimes if you know 1 or 2 reputable sources, kind of stick with that.
Yeah.
The more you start adding to that, not that they're necessarily going to contradict each other, and it's good to see opposing views, which it is, but you can have way too much fluff, which makes it hard to switch off. It really affects your decision making, I think. So, yeah, that's why I try and avoid it as much as possible. I like YouTube though.
Good man. So do I. It's the only platform I really care about. Everything else is just visibility. Yeah, I like long form. I like context.
I think with YouTube you can actually generally be very informal with it, whereas while education can be put on Instagram, it has to be short, doesn't it? And sometimes it doesn't allow you to provide that nuance.
Correct.
And then people will read it and will start copy and pasting it rather than understanding that nuance.
They'll also then interject with things that could have easily been addressed if you were allowed to input the nuance in the first place. But those people wouldn't have seen the reel if you'd injected the nuance, because then it wouldn't have performed well because it was too long. So, that's why I prefer YouTube. And I think that's no secret to anyone. But I think there's a few angles we can go with this, but I think we'll play a game of tennis. It's been a while since we've played a game of podcast tennis. We'll go back and forth on what metrics we think people listening should actually focus on in an increasingly digital world. So I'll kick things off with calories. Mm-hmm. View calories like your current account. Let's say what currencies have we got in life? You've got money, time. What's the third one people normally refer to? There is a third one that isn't calories. I'm going to add the calories is the fourth one. Okay.
I'm not sure.
Number 3 is something else. And number 4 is calories. I view calories as a sort of balance sheet in my week around training that are to be enjoyed, that are to serve a purpose. And I've always had a very, very good relationship with those numbers. But I think for people training for specific goals, as most people listening do, we talk about macro tracking and micronutrition awareness and calorie intake. And I think it's a very important one to be aware of, but don't let it own you. So I think there's a lot more information now on holistic or intuitive eating or whole foods, anti-processed foods, all this sort of stuff that in and of itself can form part of a bigger opinion that creates the composition of what you're eating. But the most important thing for overall performance and body composition is the amounts. And there's a balance of the amounts versus the quality that each individual will figure out in their own life. We went through the IIFYM phase where it was very in vogue and popular to live off Pop-Tarts and whey protein on the internet and be like, wow, look, I'm still really jacked and healthy. And it's like, well, okay, you're not getting much micronutrition, but yes, I can't argue that you have got a lot leaner. And we've learned from that, okay, calories and macros are king. That underpins everything. But then you layer in micronutrition, you layer in sensible decisions around processed foods, you use fast-acting carbohydrates when doing endurance training rather than when you're on a walk with the dogs as a snack, etc., etc., etc. All the things that we've spoken about in the podcast many times. But I think an awareness of your calorie intake gives you a form of control and a variable to manipulate that allows you to get the best out of your training goals, out of your composition, out of how you interact socially and things like that. So that as a metric, it's something to track for a period of time to either A, build an awareness, and then make informed decisions intuitively from there. Or B, as I have done, if you've got a good relationship with the numbers, because I do acknowledge some people can get a bit binary or build a bit of a negative relationship with tracking their calories as you would with wearable tech, for example. But I've always had a good relationship. I just track everything every day, other than when I'm in sort of recovery periods. Like, I mean, the first 2 weeks post-Tenacity, did I go anywhere near Hexis or MyFitnessPal? No, I did not. And it's been a rough ride getting back into that when I go, I reckon I had 2,500 calories today. Oh, 7,000. Right, I see. It wasn't quite that bad. Ever, maybe it was. Ask Jamie. He's made that error a fair few times. But I think, tracking calories as a metric is a great way to support your training goals, to be aware of your consumption, and to allow you to make more sensible decisions around what you consume. And then we can learn more about the quality of foods that we best interact with, that support us best and make us feel the best. But the pyramid that sits beneath the grains of sand at the top of the pyramid is your training, your calorie intake, your micronutrition intake, and the macronutrient composition. So I think one of the metrics we should focus on is calories and brackets macros.
Okay.
Phil?
I really want Pop-Tarts now you've mentioned that.
Oh, don't we all? Honestly, my pre-workout at uni was, I bought an espresso machine. I remember it was 160 quid and it was reduced 50% off 80 quid. Thank you, student loan company. Still paying that back. And 2 capsules, double espresso, Nespresso, pods, and 2 Pop-Tarts was my pre-workout. And then 3 days grace.
PBs.
3 days grace in my ears, walk down through the woods at Durham to the lifting gym, find the one squat rack in the entire university busy, and let all my caffeine wear off before I could even start my session. That was my week. So yeah, right, return serve, Phil.
Okay, I'm going to say, I'm going to go left field because you talked about numbers. I'm going to just say the notes section of your training.
Okay.
Your training diary.
Which
because
is old school.
Numbers are great because they're objectable. You can see things, they go up, they go down, etc., etc. But what needs to go alongside that is your perception of how you're feeling or what's going on around training, because that's going to affect those numbers. So you might look back on some training data that you have and you can see a really, really good increase in loads lifted over a certain amount of weeks. However, that could have been done because you've been in a position where work's not very busy, you've had more time, great sleep or whatever it might be. Or you've just really pushed it to the point where you've got better despite the fact that things outside of training haven't been going very well. And then that explains the fall off after it, for example. But you don't really know that. You just see lines go up and down. You need some context to go with that. And a lot of the time, the context needs to be provided by the athlete to explain how they're feeling, what other things are going on, so that when you're making a decision of training in the future, the looking back and seeing what's worked needs to be going alongside what else has worked as well, or how you felt. Because all of those outside factors will impact that. And if you make if you look at those 6 weeks went really well, I'm going to do something similar in the following 6 weeks, but, now life is chaotic where it wasn't back then, you're going to have a completely different outcome, and therefore that training is not appropriate for you. So we need that information. And I'm sure JB, Kieran will be like, come on, we need a bit more information from our athletes to help us with the programming decisions. And the note section is what's going to help with that. So
it's the context around. The metrics mean nothing unless there's context attached to them in a training setting. As a recreational athlete, if you're a professional athlete who's waking up in the morning with the sole mission of improving your performance at the Olympics in 3 years' time, or whatever it might be, then the data matters more in and of itself than the context around it does, I would argue. But for those listening, for us, agreed entirely. Nice. Okay. Great shot, Phil. Great shot. Would you like to do a tennis grunt?
No, that didn't even come out. What type bring yourself I was going to go pop as if it was like being returned, but.
Oh, nice. I'm at Wimbledon. I'm now not going to do that to make it, to just completely shaft you there. Okay, so I am going to highlight Strava followers. No, I'm not kidding. What I mean by that is smiles per mile, or smiles per gallon, shall we say, or smiles per day, smiles per week. I don't track this metric, but I am always hyper aware of when I find myself in a training session during or afterwards grinning or smiling because I've had a really good time. Some sessions are just turning up and getting it done. Some sessions intimidate you, fill you full of self-doubt, and you can then conquer and feel like you've really achieved something. And that is a big win on a daily basis, and I think is something that we should try and highlight as something worth celebrating, or at least being aware of, so that you can know, I have chosen a hobby this week that has genuinely made me really happy, almost uncontrollably in the moment. The things that do this for me the most are feeling like I'm out on my own in the middle of a new place or nowhere, out on the bike or running. So zone 2 bike riding or low intensity running, sort of out on my own. I can find myself just drifting off into the environment and going, what an amazing thing to be able to do. I was running in Biarritz recently, actually, on the eve of France versus Spain in the quarterfinals of the, or was it semi-finals of the World Cup, and never been to Biarritz before, and thought this is a really cool place. Ran along the promenade. Everyone was starting to get pretty hyped up for the football match, and I thought, oh, what an amazing way to interact with a new place, and just caught myself sort of smiling. All I was doing was a 60-minute zone 2 run, and I was just very conscious of the fact that that is a smile that I wouldn't have had I just thought you've had a long day in the car, just maybe eat and go to bed. And heavy lifts often do it for me, as I know you'll have experienced when you've been fighting for a PB for a long time, and you do it and you put the bar down, you find yourself grinning. I was laughing like a maniac uncontrollably after the Husafell Stone for like 3 minutes. It was really strange. I was like having an episode. It was crazy. I just couldn't stop just laughing, but nothing was funny. It was just like uncontrollable joy. And training is boring for the most part if you want to do it properly, because you've got to do the repeatable, consistent stuff over and over again with small progressive overloading. And that can sometimes be a bit unexciting because you're doing it in the same environment, you're doing it in the same places. So I think it's really important to highlight and make note of, or at the very least register and acknowledge in the moment when you catch yourself grinning as a result of not being on the digital device, would be my argument. Because yes, you can laugh and smile at things on the TV and your phone when you're doom scrolling, but being out there and moving and your body sending you a signal that yes, I'm having a really good time, I think is a really nice way to fight against the AI takeover that we're currently experiencing. So smiles per mile, smiles per gallon. And the reason I mentioned Strava followers flippantly, by the way, was because a great way of achieving this as well is by using your training as a way of interacting with other people. So Strava followers. Community, yes. Ergo, community. And that's important. Look, something I've been pretty bad at over the years is becoming too obsessed with the binary training data metrics so that I can get my head down and do the thing perfectly, even though I would get so much from maybe just adjusting the pace slightly or being a little bit more flexible around those metrics to get to enjoy a social interaction with other people. Sunday morning, I was about 25 seconds per K quicker than I should have been prescriptively with my zone 2 that became high zone 2, low zone 3 running. But I got to run with a group of people. It was good fun, and I had a great day as a result of it. And I caught myself smiling during it as well because it was a beautiful day. So I think don't forget to have fun with your training. And whilst there isn't a metric on your watch telling you how much fun you've had, I think you should acknowledge when you catch yourself having fun, because that is a great byproduct of a hobby that at the end of the day is as serious or as unserious as you want to make it. So
put it in your notes section.
Put it in your notes section. There we are. Right, Phil.
Forehand,
yeah. I wouldn't back myself with a backhand.
No,
not when the stakes.
I'd knock this out. I think. Oh.
Yeah.
So
you could probably call it there on that as well.
Yeah, one each. We're fine.
Is Wimbledon finished yet?
Yeah.
Who won?
Who won with?
It was Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
The biggest day of
Yannick Sinner won the
it
men's.
was Open,
and Monchova won the women's.
Wimbledon, and
Silverstone.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's always every year. There's always that.
Yeah.
That
so
weekend.
Who won? Sorry, I was.
Yannick Sinner won for the men's.
Okay. Yeah. And women's.
Monchova.
Cool. Okay. Nice. Right. Wonderful. Where were we? filter it out.
Notes.
Good game so far. Nice rally.
We're at 15 all. We're going to call it there. I'm going to go with probably an extension with the notes, the training data.
Okay.
The reason I've chosen that, because people might think that, well, that's not a metric you can monitor because it's just your training. I disagree. One, it's objective. You've got whatever it might be, the sets, reps, load used, all of that type of thing. What I like about anything that you keep track of is that it tells a story of how you adapt over time. And that's the information that you need to make decisions going forward. People are so hung up on like receiving 1 or 2 data points and thinking they've got to react when they don't need to. And in fact, that's probably the worst thing. It doesn't reflect what's happening. Unless it's like really serious and you feel awful, then it's very obvious. But most of the time, people overreact to 1 or 2 data points when really they need a lot of information to make a better decision on that type of thing. And say you have a session where the strength is like you're going to lift sets of 2, RPE 8, and you're going to do that over a 6 to 8 week period. You'd like to think that you might react in different ways. One person might increase the load a bit more linearly over that time. One person might see a really big improvement in loads utilized, but then starts to sort of plateau off towards the end of the 8 weeks. Another person might not really make any more progress, but then suddenly week 6 comes along and they start to exponentially increase the amount of load they can lift, still keeping to that RPE. So people respond completely differently to the training. And you need to have an idea of like, okay, if I did something similar later on, what type of responder am I? Because if you were one of those late responders, you think, oh, it's not working, I'm not making any progress, bin it, make changes. But really, you just had to hold on a bit longer. So if you've done that a few times, you have an understanding of how well you progress, then you can make better decisions. Hence why, even if you write it down in a notebook or if you have an app which you do it, just get as much information as possible because it tells a story and that is what's good for making decisions for the future programming.
Agreed. How much do you think people should pay attention to the algorithmic consolidation of training data in the apps that they interact with most frequently? So Garmin's VO2 max calculation, Strava's race predictor timings, your threshold pacing that will accumulate and adjust in training peaks in the background. Things like this, they are accumulation of training data that's being fed into these softwares that is giving you a measure of progress. But obsessing too much over those individual metrics without looking at the bigger context can miss with the wood for the trees, can't it? So I guess the question is, how much do you encourage people to trust the process and learn from how they respond at the end of the process versus keep an eye on the data day to day, week to week that's being fed to them from their devices?
I mean, obviously it depends on the calculations of these overall metrics are providing. A lot of the time they are a proxy for something that's trying to show is something else. So it's something that isn't the thing that you think it is, but it's representing the thing that wants to be. If we take the VO2 max prediction, like it's going off heart rate, whereas VO2 max is your maximal ability to utilize oxygen, and heart rate is one component of that. So it's clearly making a complete estimation of that, probably based on also your heart rates at certain paces, etc., etc. Could easily be influenced by caffeine, no caffeine. There's a lot of things that can actually go into it. Sometimes if it's a reliable piece of information, even if it isn't as valid, it could provide some information. But I think the more trained you become, the more you need a metric that is probably more valid and is actually a direct measurement of what it's trying to be. So for me, if I looked at VO2 max and it got better over 6 months of training, I don't necessarily have confidence that that is exactly what my VO2 max is, but I would be confident that my VO2 max has improved. Does that?
Yeah.
Whereas I think
it's like how you interact with scale weight on a diet, isn't it? Is that whilst the scale weight does not tell the full picture in terms of body fat, body composition, how you look, how you feel, your muscle mass, if it's tracking steadily down over a period of time, and you also know that you don't feel completely dreadful, you aren't losing all of your strength, then things are moving in the right direction. But if you focus all of your energy onto that scale weight and nothing else, then you're missing the other contributing factors that go into that, in the same way that if you just look at your VO2 max in and of itself based on your Garmin data, then you're ignoring the other components. And actually, as you said, it's based on heart rate data. It's not based on, it's not got a receiver in your mouth assessing how much oxygen is coming in. Okay, good.
I'm not necessarily against proxies. We use it a lot in research. Like a lot of my research in the past has been around knees, and we're making estimations as to force within the knees. And the only way to actually do that directly is if you've got a little force plate in the tibial plateau. Well, that's really inconvenient for most people. The only people that can do that are those that have had a total knee replacement. So you've got to make some estimations, and with that will come some proxies. So I'm not against using proxies. I think people just need to be aware of the reliability of the measure and the validity of the measure, and what that means to them, so they can make better decisions.
Okay, excellent. Right. Next for me is, and final one for me is, I guess it's twofold, but same category, which is hours of sleep, and the context around that being your sleep time and wake time. You're probably going, shut up, Fergus. I've got 2 young children. All of this is irrelevant. But as with all these things,
my youngest woke up at 4 a.m. this morning.
But you're here up in Edinburgh.
Yes.
I bet you were sleeping peacefully. Or did you wake up at 4 thinking, I need to get the kids?
I did wake up a few times, but it just naturally you do that because you're on. You think
so. Arguably, you could say, I'm not going to pay attention to this point, but you could also equally say, well, it means that I should pay more attention to figure out what the pattern is in terms of, okay, if I get 4 hours of sleep, I can compute information the following day. If I get 2, then it's going to be a tough day, and you can then prepare for that mentally. So from my point of view, with or without challenging circumstances, shift work, whatever caveats people often follow up this with, an awareness of how long you are sleeping for, or how long you're in bed, when you go to bed and what time you wake up, you can then start to paint a bit of a picture as to how you feel, how you perform, how you think, your cognitive performance, your physical performance, your behaviors around food, your behaviors around focus, all that sort of thing, based on that information. Because one of the biggest performance enhancing drugs that we have available to us is manipulating our sleep, because there's not much more power that we have on a day-to-day basis to impact our recovery and ability to perform than improving that as a component of our day-to-day lives. So being aware of how much you're sleeping, is it enough? Can it be less, depending on your workload? I've gone through periods with the business where, look, I just need to get through, there's periods you just need to get stuff done. And it's then a case of, okay, what's the minimum amount of sleep I need to be able to actually do these things, but to give me more time to do them? Because if you have 4 hours of sleep and then try and do the things that you're having less sleep for, but do them really badly, then you might as well just have 6 hours of sleep and do it better. That's sort of the equation that I'm encouraging people to consider. There is no formula that I'm going to recommend. I know Matthew Walker would say if you sleep any less than 8 hours, you are going to die in 3 weeks. Not quite as dramatic as that, but you know what I mean. Whilst there's people that say that you should just knuckle down and get as much done as possible, and that none of this matters with the right mindset and willpower. I don't disagree with either, as long as the right context around them is sort of emotionally aware and understood by the individual. So I try to have as consistent a circadian rhythm in terms of sleep and wake cycle as I can, especially pre-child on the way. And I try to make sure that where possible and when I can control it, I get as much sleep as I can. And look, if I get into a hotel late after a flight and I know that I'm not going to have a huge amount of sleep that night, the main thing, and I've said this before time and time again, the main thing that I try and focus on is I don't stack negative days. That's where Whoop has been a really good tool for me over the years, is if I know that I've had a really poor night's sleep in terms of amount and I know that I'm off rhythm, don't do that again the following night and just go, oh, well, you're done in, you've just got to get in the hurt locker and grizz it now. It's okay, you'll get through today, but if you do the same again tonight, you're going to suffer the following day. So an awareness of the impact of your hours slept and circadian rhythm will allow you to have more objective understanding of how to perform best on a day-to-day basis. And everyone listening to this podcast will have work, maybe families to look after, as well as training considerations, and they're all looking to perform better. So I think an awareness of that, but the flip side of it as well is you are training less now than you were before when your sleep was more optimized. And that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that, you know, because of the interrupted sleep, you can't do as much as you previously did. And that's the awareness that I think you have to develop through practice. And you can track that with wearables. You can track that manually, however you want to do so. But I think an awareness of those very simple data points: hours slept, when do you go to bed, when do you wake up, try and make it as consistent as possible. And where you can't, be aware of how that affects you.
Mm-hmm. There's a paper, and I'm going to paraphrase and probably get it slightly wrong, but it was looking at, well, the conclusion was, say you've got a certain amount of training. If you've had 7 hours plus, that amount of training could help reduce the chance of injury. If you've had less than 5 and less hours sleep, that amount of training actually increases the chance of injury. So it's really interesting to say, like, okay, I probably get 6-7 hours, but I'm waking up 2 or 3, 4 times a night.
Which is very, very different to 6-7 hours uninterrupted,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah, that's the key.
I could, if I had 5 hours uninterrupted rather than 2, 2, 1, which is quite big difference. But if I hadn't adjusted my training, which I've been forced to just because of, you know, life is busy. But if I hadn't, there's a very high chance that I could have just done something which was stupid and potentially got injured. So sleep is key.
Sleep is key. It is indeed. Right.
My
Final
one.
Phil.
Should we talk progressive overload?
Yes. Yes, we should.
So I try and see as progressive overload is, say I do something week 1, I do the same thing week 2, but it feels easier. And it feels easier because I adapted to the training of week 1. Sometimes it's harder to understand if I've adapted to week 1, because when it comes to week 2, I've added more in something, intensity, volume, whatever it might be. So really progressive overload is the ability to progress because you've adapted to the previous training rather than I've added an extra 2.5 kilos. Like, the reason you can add extra 2.5 kilos is because of the previous training. It's not the adding of it, it's the fact that you can potentially do it. So when I'm thinking of metrics to prescribe, or describe the best word, say I do a 5K week 1, I do a 5K week 12, and I do them in the same time, but my heart rate's lower, perception of effort is really easy.
And have you deloaded for week 12 would be my question here. Or have you gone week 1 to week 12 the whole way through without
I guess I
deloading or
wasn't
tapering?
necessarily thinking of what happened. I'm assuming in that 12 weeks I've done good training.
I'm teeing up a fatigue mass fitness conversation here.
Yes. So I can progressively overload because I have achieved progressive overload because doing that thing again is easier, and so I can progress forward. So people often see as like I've progressed because I do this speed here or I do this here, whereas really I see someone that's got better is that if they did the same thing again, they've improved in several metrics. Okay, well, what do we have available for us? Our perception of effort. If you write down RPEs, session RPEs, all those types of things, it should be much lower. Great. Heart rate's another thing because most people have a Garmin or something similar. Okay, you like to think it is lower. Great, it is. Right, I've progressed. So rather than just saying numbers go up on a training sheet, try and think of how easy the training is you used to do compared to now. And that's, to me, a good indicator that you've progressed well, because you could be hitting high numbers, but you're absolutely knackered by it. And, where do you go from there?
I've had a lot of coaching conversations with our athletes about how there will be weeks where we will give you the same session as the previous week. I might go, oh, I feel like I'm stagnant. I feel like I'm not making any progress. But we often do that when they're in a sort of a challenging period of adjustment to endurance volume, or something has increased as a variable in the week came before, which means that doing the same session again the following week at the same or lower effort is measurable improvement, because if it's at the same effort, then you're doing it under more cumulative fatigue, which means that you are actually performing better because you're executing the same numbers and effort in a more compromised state. Whereas if it feels better, and let's say 180 for a set of 5 is an RPE 8 week 1, and then RPE 7 week 2, as you said, progressive overload. But we are very married to the idea that the binary numbers and the metrics around it are the only things that matter week to week. And I think that comes from the fact that progressive overload is such a well-developed and well-understood concept in bodybuilding and strength sports, where you can very easily be put a 1.25 on either side of the bar and know that you've progressed. And that is the desire and the ambition on a week-to-week basis. But fatigue masks fitness. The reason I was excited to know whether that person was deloaded or not, because what I've just described is key, especially with hybrid training, because you can start a training block with a 1RM calculation on your strength numbers, and you can be 8 weeks deep and you're struggling with percentages of that 1RM that you think you should be able to do comfortably based on the context around 1RM data or your understanding of 1RM data from lifting in the past. However, in those 8 weeks, especially with a lot of the athletes we work with, we are working in increases in intensity on swimming, biking, running, or all three. We are working in increases in volume in endurance disciplines. We're likely working in increases in volume in assistance work and movement variations and things like that. So RPE and ability to perform under fatigue becomes more important the further into a block you go. And then once you let all of that fatigue dissipate and you deload and you taper, that's when your fitness reveals itself, because that sort of weight of fatigue that's making you perform badly, quote unquote, in your mind in that session is gone. So your true power can reveal itself. Cue Avengers credits. And I think that's the key, is that I think that experience, and if we go back to the original interference effect study, where 6 weeks you started to see the drop off, that's where a lot of people give hybrid training a go without a really narrow focus and without clear methodological programming. And after 6, 7, 8 weeks, they go, oh, it's not possible. I'm going backwards. I'm not getting fitter, and my strength numbers are getting worse. Oh, and I feel a bit smaller maybe. You know what, sack this. I'm just going to go back to lifting and forget about the endurance stuff. When in reality, they haven't given it the time to allow the adaptations to occur, rested, recovered, and then tested them again to go into the next training block. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of breakthroughs from a coaching perspective, is guiding people through that process where they then come out the other side and go, oh, wow, actually, now that I'm rested, I feel amazing. I mean, for me, this has been the case when I was powerlifting only versus powerlifting alongside endurance training, is the best thing I can do for my deadlift is stop deadlifting, overeat, and do nothing for 2 weeks. And then I'll walk into a gym and be like, wow, this is amazing. I am genuinely confident that if I deadlifted 220 for 1 for an absolute grinder, week 10, stopped training for 2 weeks, ate slightly above maintenance, I could deadlift 240. That's just the way I've always worked. And I don't have that experience quite as much with my endurance, running, bike, FTP, top end power, big drop off there. Swimming, pretty consistent for me all the time, even under fatigue, but that's probably because I'm not actually that technical a swimmer, let's be honest. But running, I think strength is the discipline that is most affected by that fatigue, and it's the one that we have the most binary relationship with for the most part, because it is literally numbers on a barbell. Did it move or did it not move? So I've enjoyed guiding athletes through that process, but I think it's something that's worth flagging because progressive overload comes in many forms, as you've said.
I think people rush the initial weeks as well because they're feeling fresh at that point. So rather than, well, it's like, say you're running over a jetty going out to sea, and then every time that you take a step, another plank arrives, and you just keep going. You move too fast, you fall in the water.
That's a great analogy.
So I think I stole it off a friend of mine.
No, just take it, Phil. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I keep saying strength is never a weakness and weakness is never a strength. And I keep crediting Mark Bell every time I say it. But no one I've said it to knows it was his. So
Yeah,
I'm like, oh,
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Super Training HQ. You didn't used to watch those videos?
I mean, I can't remember him saying that one, but I remember watching those videos.
I've done it again. Anyway, we both have great analogies that we've
It's
plagiarised.
it's like, you know how those Einstein quotes come out, and you know, like Einstein probably didn't say that, but it sounds good.
Churchill's the
Churchill,
one.
yeah.
It's Churchillian is how it's referred to
Really?
now. If a quote is not ascribed to someone, they just call it Churchillian. It's like, wow, Churchill was a switched-on guy. And like, oh, Gandhi was a switched-on guy. Like, did they say any of these things? I don't know. I think there's a lot of Marcus Aurelius quotes that are just kind of like general things said by Stoics that like, just give it to Marcus Aurelius, yeah. But anyway, your analogy about planks running out in front of you was rock solid, and essentially the point being that whilst you're again, we've spoken about this a lot recently, being patient with the process before things get tough is the key to actually long-term adaptation. Whereas if you try and make things tough whilst you're fresh, all you're doing is you're rushing the adaptive process. So you want to be moving at the pace intended by the programming rather than trying to be making every session as challenging as it possibly can be. Okay,
Cool.
good game of tennis. Well done.
Well served.
Wimbledon-esque. Fantastic.
We should have been. Oh, I've got white.
Yo, do I have white underneath? No.
And Wimbledon whites.
Wimbledon whites, yeah. Have you got white trousers on, Phil?
No, I've got blue
Not
ones.
tanned enough for white trousers as well. That'd be absurd. Imagine turning up today in a pair of linen trousers, and that would have been sick.
Bandana.
Yeah, that would have been sick. Anyway, all right, next time. And we will see you next time on the podcast. Thank you.